All right. Can you guys online hear me okay? I don't care if I keep that. All right, sweet. All right, so I'm just going to say a few words. Tim, I don't know if you would have used this system or not. It's basically like Zoom and everything else, but you're a presenter now. I'm just going to say a few words, introduce you, and then I'll turn it over to you. But when you're ready, here, actually, let me share my screen and you can see what I'm seeing.
I've only ever used this program like a little bit.
Okay.
Back half of 2020, but
Gotcha. All you do is just kind of pull out the purple panel here, and then if you want to click the share button, and then you can either like share just a window, or if you want to share a whole screen, it'll give you an option in there. And then it's just kind of, I'll watch the chat for you. If you don't notice the chat messages, I'll just relay them to you.
all right, can you? So you can see my screen right now, right?
Yeah, we can see it here. You're good. All right, so let me kind of just say a few words. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your afternoon to come see this. This is a new thing that we're trying to start in the degree. I think one of the weaknesses of our program right now is that we don't introduce game engines early enough. So anytime we get the opportunity, we're going to try to pull in the first years, the second year, show you what game engines are and how they're going to be used. They're a really good tool together with the game jam because they let you really quickly get up to speed, get something on screen. You don't have to do a lot of the infrastructure work that you would have to do in something like Pygame or Python or low-level C++ libraries. Those still definitely have their place. It's just for making a game, getting your vision on the screen really quickly, game engines, I think, are a really good tool. The game engine that we're going to show today, Tim will probably say a few more words about it, but Godot, I think, is going to become one of the up-and-coming game engines. Right now, if you ask a game developer off the street, they're going to probably name Unity and Unreal as the two big game engines. And they're still worth learning, but Godot's completely free, open source. I think the developers of it have a pretty strong commitment to keep it that way, not to ever charge anything for it. It has a phenomenal 2D engine. That's kind of what I like the most about it and use the most about it. It also, for the first years, is kind of nice because one of the scripting languages you can use, GDScript, is a lot like Python. There are a couple variants, but it's similar enough that you can take what you know about Python, get up to speed even quicker. So that's my take on the engine. I'm going to turn it over to Tim. Tim graduated, help me out, was it 2020 spring?
Yeah, it was 2020.
Okay, so Tim was one of our graduates from the game programming degree. He, I think, was one of the pioneers, one of the first people that started using Godot. He actually kind of got me into it as well. But you used it for pretty much every game jam, didn't you?
Yeah, I've never really switched off of Godot for like anything. It's just I've gotten so used to it.
Yeah. He was a really good student. He's a good public speaker, so I'm kind of looking forward to his talk, and I will turn it over to him. Yeah. Sure.
All right, so I'm going to just say a few things about Godot before we begin. Jason said some of the stuff I was going to say. It's free, open source, and it's just if you ever if you get like successful, like you're never going to be charged royalties. You're never going to have to shell like any money for this thing ever under any circumstances, and that's just sort of as a concept that's really sort of appealing. And because it's also open source, that opens up to collaborators from a lot of different places. So people from all over the world contribute to Godot, and like positive changes can get brought into the main engine that everyone downloads, and people are constantly developing new modules and parts to add in and expand on Godot. Um, so like that's what free and open source really, how that benefits this engine. And just like Jason said, its 2D is stronger than its 3D. If you were going to make a high profile game, your best bet is in 2D because its 3D is still lagging behind some of the other engines. Although there's a lot of big updates on the horizon that definitely seek to improve on that aspect. And I think in terms of smaller projects, it can't be beat because I have used Unity once before, and even getting it installed was a pain. But getting Godot installed and running, it takes like 5 minutes at maximum. And so just the speed at which you can do things, you can start things up, you can test things out for smaller projects and like game jams and stuff like that. I think it's the clear winner in that regard. So Um, so yeah, I'm going to be starting up a project here, and
Testing
and
microphone.
that was some horrible echo, but I'm going to be creating up a project here, and I'm going to be showing you how to get a basic game started in Godot, get you introduced to some of its core concepts, and I didn't see a lot of people with like laptops, right?
I didn't realize I didn't bring one.
It's fine. It's fine if you didn't bring one. It's just it just means like once I'm finished with this, I'm gonna send the files over to Jason, and he can like post them around if you guys want to download and check out what I create afterwards for yourself. So we're gonna start off to create a new project. We're gonna create a new folder here. I'm gonna call it Intro to Godot, and great. All right. Uh, Also, Jason, you're gonna have to let me know if anything comes up in the chat because I'm gonna be having I got my whole like notes on my other monitor.
Yeah, sure, you're fine.
All right, so this right here, this the screen you start off with, and this is this view is of the current scene, and we're gonna switch this over to 2D real quick. Up here, you can see there's tabs to switch between the 2D, the 3D, the scripting, and the asset library. And like I said before, there are a bunch of good assets in here. Um, Compared to Unity, Unity still has a lot more, but there's definitely a lot of cool stuff in here. You could just download straight from the editor. But we're gonna switch to 2D and create a 2D game here. So you can see surrounding the main screen, there's a bunch of different tabs, and we're gonna go through them one by one. And the first one is the Scene tab over here. The Scene tab shows you the scene tree, and the scene tree can contain nodes and references to other scenes. And so let's get a node in here. We have to create a root node. So I'm going to hit 2D scene. And there we go. We've created a node 2D in our scene tree. So I'm going to rename it to root because it is our root node. And then that will allow us to save the scene. I'm going to save it as root. There we go. You can see here we've got one of the tabs. This is showing our current scene. So we are on the root scene. The next tab is the inspector. You're going to be coming here a lot, and the inspector here has all of the unique properties of each node that you highlighted. So you can see this is our root node, and it contains its position, its rotation, its scale, stuff like that. And there's not a whole lot here because node 2Ds aren't very complex, but we're going to get a new node in here. And so this is the create new node list, and you can see there's a bunch of different nodes, each one of which have different uses. But you generally find that you will come back to the same few nodes over and over and over again. So we're going to create a sprite, and this sprite is going to be our player character. And we're going to name it Bubbles, and you'll find out why in a second. Let me get up something. All right. 1 second. All right. So I just added in a sprite I made a little while ago, and so the file system tab down here. This shows you all of the files that are currently inside of your project. And so you can see here's the root scene we made, and the default environment and the icon are files Godot includes automatically. But I just added bubbles.png. And so when we select our sprite, if we come over to the inspector, we can see texture. And so we can either load a new texture, or we could take the sprite and move it directly over to there. And there we go, we've got Bubbles. And he's a little blurry right now. And to fix that, we'll come over to this tab, the Import tab. The Import tab, it contains a lot of different settings that let you change the way files are imported, because before Godot uses any files, they go through an import process, and this lets you change the settings of the import process. And one thing that's on by default is the filter. So we're going to turn that off, and we're going to re-import. And you can see he's looking nice and crisp now. And we're going to go and save that as the default, so we don't need to do that again. All right. So next thing we need to do for a player is we're going to create a new node and create a camera. And so this camera will allow us to see our little dude. And we come over back to the inspector, and if we set it as current, you can see this this blue rectangle becomes thick and highlighted, and now this is our current camera. And I'm gonna just come in here. This is the project settings. It contains a lot of different settings, but the ones I'm concerned about right now are these. I'm gonna make a few changes here to allow us to see our character a little bit more better. So you can see the camera is shrunken down. All right, so what do we have right now? We have a bubble sitting there doing nothing. So in order to get this bubble moving around, we need to give it a script, give it some behavior. So in order to attach a script to a node, you come over to your scene tree and you click this button right here. And so everything looks all good, and now we can create a new script. So this is Godot's scripting engine, and it has its own unique scripting language called GDScript, and GDScript was made from the ground up to work with Godot, and it has a lot of engine. It has a lot of built-in functions for the engine that make it a lot easier to work with, a lot faster to work with than, let's say, if Python were added as a scripting language. And there are other methods you can do to just script. There is C++ and C#, and there's also a node-based visual scripting language. And there's also a few community-supported languages like Rust, and a couple other ones I can't recall right now. But the main one the one that's easiest to use is GDScript, because it's the engine just has everything built in. And so for this is the default script, and we're gonna head back into the project settings real quick and head to the input map. So we want to control our character, and in order to make that easier, Godot has this input map, and so we can declare actions. So in this case, we're going to declare move left, move right, move up, and move down. And so with these 4 actions, we can now define what buttons will control them. These can be keyboard buttons, or they can be joypad buttons, so you can easily add gamepad support to your game. We're going to add WASD. All right, now we can come back to Bubble script. And we are going to go into the underscore process function. And this is a special function in Godot. This is one that the engine handles for you. And this particular function is called every single frame. And it also gives you the delta time.
Hey, Tim, can
And
I
so
interrupt you just for a second? Are you able to zoom in on that at all? Our TV's kind of small in this room.
I should be able
I
to.
don't know.
Does that help
Yeah,
you read
that's
it?
perfect. Is that good for you
All
guys?
right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So yeah, this is the underscore process function. It's one of the engine handle functions. And so we are going to use this to control our character. So Python or GE script is very similar to Python in a lot of regards. And so if you've used Python before, which I'm assuming everyone here has, then it will look very familiar. So we're going to start off. And there is one key difference. When you create a variable, you need to declare it with the var keyword. So we are going to create a motion vector. And this will compile all of the motion that we accumulate. And one thing I want to take a moment to highlight for a second, in GD script, while you're working in the engine, Godot has all of the documentation built into it. There's a separate website for it, but it's also all available inside of the engine itself. So Vector2 is one of the classes Godot gives you by default, and if I hold Control and mouse over it, or click on it, I should say, it takes me directly to the class documentation for Vector2. As you can see, I can scroll down, I can see all its properties, all of its methods, the constants, and then a description of everything it does. And so this is just is so useful whenever you're working on something. If you need to remember what a certain function does, what method what parameters it requires, and what methods the function or the class even has to begin with. And you can also there's a button at the top right of the scripting to search help. And this also displays every single class, and you can search. So I can search by rotate, and you see all of the different rotate functions, like the one from the vector. Anyway, so we're going to use those input maps that I just set up, and we're going to check whether or not an action is pressed, and you can see the different actions we have available here. So we're going to say if action move left is pressed, we're going to subtract 50 from the x value of the motion vec. And then what we can do is I'm just going to save a little time right here. We're going to repeat the same process for all of the other actions. And then what we can do is we can add that motion vector to our position. Here we go. Now if we head back to the 2D scene, now we're going to need something else in this scene in order to actually see that our character is moving. So let's get a friend in here. So we'll create a new sprite. We're going to call him Spiky. And we're going to add the texture into there. So if we move Spiky out here, we can see. Here we go. We can see we've got a character moving. All right, but that's not very interesting just to move around and not do anything. So, in order to access a lot of the powerful functions of Godot, we're going to need to access its physics engine. So, in order to do that, we're going to make a little change to bubbles here. So if you right-click on it, we're going to go down to Change Type and change them from a sprite to a kinematic body 2D. So Godot's physics engine has two main parts to it, areas and bodies, and we'll be using both of them. So we just changed bubbles to a kinematic body 2D. And you can see there's a little error here. Every body needs to have the data for what it collides with. And to get that, we use a collision shape 2D. And the collision shape 2D needs to know what shape it is. So we come over to the inspector, and we're going to create a new circle shape 2D. And let's also come in here, add another sprite, and get bubbles back in there. There we go. So we can see Bubbles now has this blue ring around it, and that's its collision shape. Although by itself, it can't collide with a whole lot. So what we are going to do is we're going to give it another body to collide with. So let's add a new sprite. We're going to call this wall. And then there we go. So with this wall sprite, we're going to add another body, a static body this time. And again, every body needs collision data, so we're going to give it a collision shape, and this time do a rectangle shape. And we're going to shape it to form. And one last little change we're going to need to do. So we're going to have to come back to Bubble Script and make two separate changes. So first, since we changed this type, we're going to have to change the type at the top. And second, currently we are just moving the position by ourselves, but we need to have the physics engine handle the position moving. So in order to do that, we're going to replace this with the function of move and slide. And so we simply take the motion, put it into there, and it even handles delta for us. So let's take a look at this. We take this, and now we have a wall we can collide with. But a single wall with nothing else isn't very interesting. So let's add some more stuff. So Spiky over here. Spiky, we want to be able to interact with him as well, but we don't necessarily want to just run into him and nothing else. So let's go back and add another scene, or another node. This time we're going to add an area 2D. And all areas and bodies need collision data, so we're going to add another collision shape to it and set it as a circle. There we go. And we're going to rename this Spike Area. And now this area by itself doesn't do a whole lot. You can see we can even walk straight through it. But where areas shine is in the signals that they have. And signals are found over here in the node tab. So if we select over to it, we can see a huge list of signals. And signals are something that are very, very important when you're using Godot. And they just allow you a lot more freedom and ability to pass information between different nodes. And they also allow you to save on processing space or processing time, because if you only if you let's say every frame you want to check to see whether or not your health has gone down, you could spend you could every single frame update your health counter and like check your health counter and find that out, or you could only run that code when it's actually relevant. And the way you would do that is via a signal. So if your player gets hurt, you could emit the hurt signal, and some other things can act upon that. So the Area 2D has a lot of different signals, but the one we're interested in is body entered, because bubbles is a kinematic body. We're interested when a body enters this area. So to use a signal from the editor, we're going to come down here to the connect button, and this opens up this menu. And so this lets you pick which script you want to connect this signal to. So bubbles is the only one with a script, and we're going to connect it there. And so you can see this function automatically got created here on spike area body entered. And there's also this little symbol next to it, and that shows that this function is connected via a signal. So this function will be called every time a body enters Spiky's area. So we want to be a little bit more selective than that. So what we're going to do is we can look at the body that entered the area, and we can check its name. And we only care about if the body is bubbles. And then what we're going to do is we are going to change his modulate. And modulate is just a way to easily change the color of nodes. We're going to do just that. Change it to a red color. All right. So let's take a look. You can see as soon as I enter into Spiky's area, bubbles changes to a red color. But it never changes back. So that's where we can come back to here and look at our signal list again. There's another one, body exited. So let's connect that one as well. And we can just simply do the opposite of what we did up here. And we can set his modulate back to normal. Look at that, we can interact with both now. But this is still not very interesting as itself. So let's make things a little bit harder on our bubbly friend. And I'm going to turn on the grid to help me out with this. So let's create a few more walls. And set them up nice and long. There we go. Now we have a little tunnel we have to try and escape from. But it's not very difficult if the obstacle isn't moving at all. So let's try and fix that. So we're going to come over here to Spiky, and once again we're going to add a script to him. So I want to make him bob up and down. I think that would be an interesting way to make him more dangerous. So we're going to declare a few variables up here. And any variables declared up here are available to every other method. So we're going to come down here, and so this is another special engine method. This is the _ready method, and this is this is a place to put sort of all of your initialization code. When the scene loads up and the object is loaded into the scene, then the _ready function is called, and so any initializations or things that need to get ready before it can start working properly can be put here. So we are going to set the starting Y to its position when it first loads in. There we go. And once again, we're going to call uncomment the _process function, and we are going to add delta to time, and we're going to make his Y position change a little bit every time, every single frame. So let's see what that did. All right, so we can see every single frame that that position or that function is being called, and it's changing a position up and down just like the cosine function. Although he's still not very difficult to dodge by himself. So let's get a few more in here. But, well, I could just duplicate them like I did the walls. Problems would arise when I want to make a single change to it. And it would be a lot easier if I could make only one change and have it affect all of them. And so this goes back to what I mentioned earlier, in that scene trees can contain either they can either contain nodes or references to other scenes. And so that's what we're going to do. So if we head over to Spiky here and right click on him again, we can come here to save branch as scene, and we'll save it out. And now what that's done, if we head over to here, this has made Spiky into his own separate scene. You can see the scene tree just has his 3 nodes. And so what this allows us to do is make a reference to this scene. So let's show that right now. So if we head here to the file system, we can find our spiky.t scene, and we can simply drag him in here, and drag as many of these as we want. And all of these spikies are based off of the original spiky scene. So if I made a change here, all 3 of these would get the same change. And so that would that allows me to not have to repeat myself and make little changes over and over and over again. But we run into an issue. If all the spikies are based off the same scene, then they're all going to be doing the exact same thing, and that's not very interesting. So we need a way to fix that, and thankfully there is one. So we're going to head back to the spiky script, and we are going to use what Godot calls export variables. And to create an export variable, you're going to declare it with export. And then we need to give it a type. So we're going to create one called movement scale. And we're going to create a float. And we're going to call this one movement speed. And we'll create one more int for good luck. And call this one movement offset. And so what has this done? Well, if we head back to the 2D scene and head over to one of the spikies, we can see over in its inspector, we now have those 3 export variables that I declared in the inspector. And if I were to change one of these, it would be unique to that individual spiky. So let's head back to the script, and let's use these, and so we can get it. We can see what I'm talking about. So we're going to replace this 25 with the movement scale. We're going to multiply the movement speed right here. And we're going to add the movement offset right here. So if we head back to the spikies, we can. We'll set this guy's movement scale to 30. We'll set his speed to 2 and his offset to 1. And the spiky, let's set him to 100. And we'll set his movement speed to 4 and his offset to 20. And this one, let's go 40. And we'll keep that the same and change this to negative 20. So if we run the scene now, we can see all 3 spikies, despite being based off of the same scene, now have different parameters and different behaviors. Although one downside, and you can see it right here, is now that they're separate scenes, that me clicking the signal connect button inside of the editor no longer works. So we need a way to connect all of these spikies to our bubble without needing to go to each one of these and connect them in the editor. So in order to accomplish that, we're going to need a way to get a reference to all of these spikies. And one important part of Godot, whenever you're creating games, is being able to know how to get references to the correct nodes that you need. So we need a reference to every single spiky node. And one good way to do that, if we head back to the spiky scene, is we can come back to the nodes, and instead of going to signals, we go to groups. And we will add spiky to the enemy group. And so we can come back to here, we can head over to bubbles, and we need bubbles to connect to every single one of the enemies. So what we can do in this _ready function, we can iterate through all of the enemies in the enemy group by doing this. So what this function does is it goes into the scene tree, and it looks through all of the nodes and finds any in the specified group, and so that's convenient. We can go now. We can connect up. Now we can connect up those signals that we connected through the editor before through code. So let's get about to doing that. And and on a similar topic to how I mentioned getting the references to the correct thing, this enemy node reference that we have is not the correct node we need to connect. If we look back at the spiky, the node we were getting is the spiky, and we need to get the spike area, because the spike area is the one with the signal we need to connect. And so in order to get that node, reference to that node, what we're going to do is we're going to use the get node function, and you'll be using this function all the time. And we can simply give it the name of the node spike area. And so now we have the spike area, we can connect that to bubbles. And so we are going to use the same signal that we used before, body entered. We're going to connect it to ourselves. And we're going to connect to the same function that it used to be connected to. Here we go. And we're going to do the same thing for the other one. And so let's see if that worked. All right, just like it was before, we were connected up to these nodes, but now we did it through code rather than doing it through the editor. And all these spikies, they run into our poor little bubble. All right, but this still really isn't a game, so to speak. So let's give it some goal to accomplish. So we're going to head over here. We're going to head over to Bubbles, and we're going to add a new node to him. This time, a label. Labels are sort of your go-to text displaying nodes. And we're going to move it up to the top left of where the camera is. And we're going to, so you can see the text appears there. And we're going to name this label hit count. So, this right now won't do anything. So let's hook it up to our pre-existing code. So we know that every time we get hit, this function gets called. So we can use that to increase our hit count. So we're going to, up here, create a hit count variable. We'll start it at 0. And every time we get hit, we can modify the hit count. And we can update the text of the hit count label. And once again, we need to get a reference to another node. But thankfully, this time, the node we need a reference to is a child of the node that the script is attached to. And so we could do like we did before. We could do get node and then get hit count like this. But because accessing your children nodes is such a common thing to do in Godot, they actually have a shortcut for it. And that would be $, $hit count. And so these two lines are exactly equivalent. And so I like using the $ hit count. Makes things a lot easier to type. And so we are going to access its text. And we are going to set it to we're going to have it be set to the number of times we've been hit. All right, let's check this out. So you can see every time we get hit, up here the hit count gets incremented. And now we can make it a game to see how much you can, how few hits you can get out of the spiky tunnel with. And to finish off the game, we're going to add a new node, make an area 2D. And every area needs a collision shape, so let's add one. And we're going to make it over here. And so this will be our end goal. And we're going to call this win area. So we want Bubbles to be able to enter the win area. So once again, we're going to connect up body entered to Bubbles. But what to do when we enter the win area? Well, I think I know what will motivate the player. Down here, let's create. Congratulations. You made it out. There we go. We'll have a label down here. We'll name it win text. And what we can do is next to every single node in the tree, there's this eye icon, and you can use it to hide any node. So we'll hide that for right now. We'll come back into Bubbles, and when Bubbles enters the win area, we're going to reference win text, and we are going to first we're going to replace the text with how many hits you got hit by. And we do that like this. And we'll replace that big old X I put in there with hit count. And then all we got to do is we got to make it visible. like that. So let's take a look. And boop, there we go. Congratulations, you made it out with only 3 hits. And one last thing I'll do is we need a menu. So I'm going to come up here to this little plus button. This allows us to create a new scene. We're going to create another 2D scene. And we're going to name this menu. Save it out. And let's create another label. And this will be Magical Spiky Cave Adventure. Name this title. And we'll create another new node. Button. We get over here. Name it start. And this will be our start button. We'll attach a script to it. Then once it has a script to it attached to it, we can come to the button signals, attach the pressed signal to itself. And once start gets pressed, we can get the tree, change the scene, and we can change over to the root scene. Oh, now we have a menu. Your mouse over, click on the button, and boom, you're in the game. So, this was sort of my basic overview on some of like the core features of Godot. As you can see, the of all of the nodes we used, this is all we used out of all of them, and most of the projects you'll come across, you're gonna use just a handful of nodes like this, and it's just I just find it really easy and quick to get things up and running, because you saw how easily I was able to get some like complex behavior otherwise up and running, like collisions and area detection and movement stuff like that. And Godot just made everything super streamlined. So that's sort of the end of my little demonstration. If anyone had any questions they'd like to ask, I'd be happy to answer any of them.
I've got one just to get it started. You may have said this. I had to run over to the Unity talk real quick. Where do you see Godot, like right now and maybe in a couple years, living in kind of the gaming ecosystem? Is it going to compete with Unity Unreal? Is it kind of its own little niche thing? What do you think?
Well, as it stands right now, Godot, I don't know if you knew this, Godot was actually made back in 2014, or it was made public in 2014. It had some brief time as a private game engine before then. Yeah, right now it's still pretty niche. No big heavy hitting titles have come out of it. But it definitely has the potential to make something great, and I've definitely seen a lot of cool games in development still. The biggest thing holding it back right now, it's 3D compared to like Unity is definitely lacking. But like I said, there's a big update, the 4.0 update, and like every problem that you bring up in Godot for the past like 3 years is like, wait for the 4.0 update, it'll all be fixed. So I definitely think like as like a free engine, it has a lot of potential to be sort of part of like a free development workflow, because a lot of people like to brag like, oh, I like every single program I use is like free and open source, and it's just um it just needs more games, more recognition, and I definitely think uh it'll carve out its niche. But be honest, sort of small dedicated fan base right now.
What about you guys in here online? What was your impression so far?
For one, I enjoyed it. And secondly, when you say 3D is lacking 3D, what do you mean by that?
Could you hear that, Tim?
What
Or
Yeah, I was able to hear it. So when I say it's lacking 3D, um, like I can actually pull some stuff up because I still have my screen shared. So I have been working on a game for the past few years in Godot, and it's a 3D game. Um, so it's not that Godot can't do 3D or that Godot is horrible at 3D. The biggest problem with it is in sort of advanced topics is where it really falls behind. Um, so if you're doing basic stuff in 3D, you can certainly let me load this up real quick. So you can certainly do uh, a bunch of basic 3D stuff, and like uh, to show off my little pet project. Um, so yeah, there's a bunch of stuff you could do in 3D still, but if you want a lot of advanced features like what was it called? Um, it's like like compute shaders. That's what it's called. Like compute shaders aren't there. A lot of post processing effects are lacking compared to Unity, and so it's in that regard that I say that it's lagging behind Unity. Um, so like uh, so you can see like you are able to create a bunch of different stuff in Godot in 3D and do a whole lot, but you aren't going to make the next Call of Duty in Godot. It's just not up to snuff for that yet. So,
Okay.
did that answer your question?
Yeah, it is.
and just so you guys know, his game is not laggy. It's Blackboard.
Yeah, I
video system's kind of laggy.
This is a game I've been working on for a little while. I showed it off at SGC, which I'm assuming some of you probably saw it. Screw you, Alex. My game runs perfectly fine.
I also have a question, but this is from the 3D section, just seeing this. It does look like still pixely, which like, that's cool for like whatever game you're going for. But I was wondering if there is like if that is just the way your game is, or if like you can make a game, or if like all games in Godot would be like that in 3D.
So the question, like, I'm not sure I understand the question. Like, will all games look like mine in Godot?
I think it's more just like you have a little bit of like a Minecraft aesthetic. Is that kind of something that the engine enforces on you? You have
No, this is how I've created the game. It's called voxel art. It's like pixels are 2D, uh, or voxels are to 3D what pixels are to 2D. It's like 3D cubes used to build like a sort of low definition image. And so this is how I chose to make the game because I wanted. Oh, it's like I don't have Maya, so so like if I want to make art, I can't make. I'm just not an artist, so when I go to make art, I make it in voxel because it's a lot easier for me to work with, like voxel stuff. Um, so like so no, every 3D game you make won't necessarily need to look like this. Actually, do I have any 3D games? I got Creepy Clown Carnival. I made a lot of a lot of different games. Um, So I can show you another example of a game made with different tools and different people.
Oh, this is the thing I thought it was. Yeah, I remember this from the previous game too.
Oh, it's going onto the wrong screen. Let me just open up. All right, so we can see with this is another like completely different sort of style and look to it. You're not limited to what kind of things you can put into Godot. Um, like you need to create the 3D assets, and then you'll be able to like load them in, and they can be whatever you want them to look like. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does, thanks.
I'm curious, like Adam, Alex, Jana, I think you guys all went to the Unity and maybe the Unreal version of this last semester. Like, what was your initial thoughts? Like, what's the development process like in this compared to those engines? Is it?
I feel like this is a bit more smoother for programming.
Yeah, this feels a lot faster and smoother.
Mhm.
Because it depends on how you use them.
Yeah.
Because I remember looking at the Unity and being a little confused. I have watched a little bit of tutorials for Godot, but the way he did was pretty different than the tutorials, and just watching it, I knew around what was happening with, compared to Unity. I was a little bit off.
And this is my first time seeing Godot really. And even I thought this felt faster, better,
Yeah.
easier to understand at least.
It seems very fast.
I mean, to me, that's its greatest strength is just it's very cleanly organized. Everything's in a logical place. Like the 180 flip side of that to me is Unreal, which has a ton of stuff in it, but it's just all over the place and it's a little bit harder to find what you're looking for.
I could not tell you a single thing I remembered from my Unreal Engine thing last semester when I went to that.
Currently,
It's nothing against your teaching session. It's just Unreal itself is a little, it's learning curve. It's much, much deeper, in my opinion. Okay, any other questions or thoughts? Well, we got Tim on the line. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, actually, yeah. How does Godot handle scene transitions?
He did a little bit of that. It was towards the end. Do you still have that project open, Tim? That you can show the.
Let me open it real quick. It handles scene transitions very easily. If you're asking me about like animation, for example, that's a little bit different. So let's see. Give it a second to load. What? Oh, I need to. I never said. Oops. So let's see. So if we head over to start.gd, you can see this is how scene transitions happen in Godot. You do getTree.change scene, and I was able to change from this menu scene with just the menu on it over to the root scene with the game in it. And if you're asking about animation, or like make it like look different or like have a black fade out to fade in, that would be something you need to implement yourself. And it's not very hard to do that. If you'd like, I can. I mean, I don't know if that's actually what you're asking about. I guess I'm assuming, but yeah, that's just something you need to do yourself. Otherwise, every time you change a scene, it's just this one line.
And that can be called from any event, whatever the equivalent of this,
Yeah, you can call this from any node and any time. So I just called it on the start button because that's what's changing the scene.
That right there is one of my favorite parts of Godot. Is just everything is a part of the scene tree, and there's no artificial distinctions between like prefabs and blueprints and separate things. It's just there are scenes within scenes which are a part of the tree. It just feels very clean and organized.
So there's no like game manager script?
What's that?
There's no game manager script, you know?
I don't know. You're stronger than I am, Tim. Alex asked if there's any kind of like game manager script or
A
trying to
game
think of an
manager script?
You know, like in Unity, you have something that keeps track of all the master values, like your health and your XP or whatever.
You could, just my opinion, you could. It would just be one part of the larger scene tree.
Okay,
Say if you needed, you can just make a scene to run all those calculations.
Yeah.
Just call it a review.
Yeah.
There is something you can do, and this may or may not be what you're talking about. Is you can create sort of like global scripts. So I could create a script right now, and I did in a couple of my games. I just call it like globals.gd, and that holds like global variables, and it can hold like stuff that can be referenced from any scene anywhere at any time. So and also you can put stuff like the music track. Like if you switch scenes, the music would reset. So you can sort of elevate some nodes up to like this global status to make it so that the even while transitioning scenes, the music doesn't get interrupted by loading a different audio player node. So if that
Yeah.
helps answer your question.
Yeah, I think that's what he's looking for.
It seems to me like those more decentralized,
Mhm.
like Unity.
Yeah, that feels fair.
Yeah, to do like global stuff, you would come over here and like load it in this tag called like auto load. And I believe what it does precisely is it takes your scripts or your nodes or your scenes or whatever, and sticks them at the very top of the scene tree before everything else. Um, so yeah, you can do that for to get like global stuff.
Okay. Any other questions for Tim?
What's
Yeah.
the export to? Does it have like global, VR, or is it just PC?
Good question.
So what can it export to? Yeah, we can take a look at that real quick. So the presets that it has: Android, iOS, HTML5, Mac OS, UWP, Windows, and Linux. Those are the default presets. And you might, I'm not too familiar with exporting to anything besides Windows. Um, there might be more packages and presets available through other people. But I do know that this is also something that Unity has over it, and that Unity can be put onto like anything with like an LCD. Um, Whereas like this is very rigid, and you need a lot more effort if you want to just get it, say, on the Switch. I do know there's companies out there that do like you could like hire them to port your game to the Switch. But like for right now, this is the easiest thing. These are the ones that are easiest to export to.
And I think part of it is there's legal issues. Like if somebody wants to publish for Switch, they have to go through Nintendo. So since this is kind of a completely open source project, they can't make that a built-in part of the engine. That's why it's kind of, you sometimes have to go to external partners to do that.
Yeah, actually, there is a 3D file format. I forget which one it was. It was like FBX or something like that. Again, I'm not an artist, so I don't deal with that very much. But there was like a proprietary 3D format, and like everybody used it, but Godot couldn't because if they brought it into the fold, it would like Godot couldn't be as open as it was before, and so that kind of stinks. But I mean, I believe there's community made plugins to help get around that, and uh, it's being worked on at the very least.
Sure. I didn't catch all your question, Kyler. What was?
Those like the legal problems, whatever. Is it a problem to publish to support that platform, or to put it on that platform store?
I think it's more just that Godot can't themselves have like an export to Switch button. You have to go through somebody that has a license with Nintendo. Yeah, it's definitely possible. It's just
It's just like if they wanted to make that a default part of the software, I mean, it would be like supporting like what's Word's file type? Like Microsoft Word produces like its own specific file type, and so like you can't just like use the, I mean, I'm pretty sure at least you can't just like use that willy nilly, and so like you would need to get permission or whatever it is, and so that's the same problem that's plaguing Godot. It's like um, if they did this, they would need to agree to like X, Y, or Z license, and they don't want to do that. They want to stay on the MIT license, and anything that would compromise that is a problem. And so like the open source license is a good thing and a bad thing in that regard, in that there are some limitations that being purely open source uh, you run into when you are purely open source.
If I remember right, there's like pretty good documentation about if you want to port to another platform, here's the like functionality that you need to define in a module or something and give that to Godot. So if you reached out to Nintendo, got a publishing license to go with them, get access to their SDK, then you could kind of write that yourself. You wouldn't have to go through a third-party publisher to do that for you.
Yeah, it's certainly been a lot more work though. I haven't looked very far into it. Most of my experience comes from I was active on like the game development Twitter circle for a little while, and so like I heard stories from other people who wanted to get Godot stuff onto Switch and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any questions? All right. We really appreciate, Tim, your time. Tim's a graduate. We don't have any hooks in him anymore. He's not getting paid for this or anything. He just did it out of the kindness of his heart. So if you guys would just give him a quick round of applause. All right.
Yeah,
Hopefully
thanks for listening to me ramble on.
Yep, you did great. Thank you.
Yeah, if you have any questions about Godot stuff, if you decide to use it for this upcoming global game jam, then I'm on Discord. I'm on the SSU Games Discord and the House Discord and stuff. So you can find me on there and shoot me a message if you feel like.
Wait, and what's your last name?
Steiner, Steiner.
Okay, so you don't like enemy propaganda.
All right. Well, thanks again. And I'm gonna.
Oh yeah. Also, Jason, I'm gonna package everything up and DM it to you over Discord if that's all right.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So then people can like download this, and mess around with bubbles.
I'll probably put that in a link to the YouTube video once it uploads, probably on the Global Game Jam site or Discord. All right. Thanks again.
All right. Bye bye.